So I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Miguel Alatorre. I'm Fossil Free California's campaigns organizer, and I'm really glad to be here and welcome you all to this space today. Okay, without further ado, I think we'll introduce our first speaker today. So I'm going to hand it off to Zara Hassan, a 16-year-old climate activist with Youth versus Apocalypse from Oakland, California. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Miguel. So hi, my name is Zara. Like Miguel said, I'm 16 years old. I'm a climate activist from Oakland, and I work with Youth versus Apocalypse. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about divestment. I actually got my start in activism and social justice in education. And when I started getting more into the climate justice field, I was shocked to find that my teachers' money was invested in fossil fuels. And even more concerningly, they were shocked too. CalSTRS and CalPERS, which is the pension funds for California public teachers and public workers respectively, invest $8.9 billion in fossil fuels, with CalPERS, public workers pension fund, contributing $5.5 billion. This money, again, billions of dollars, goes to the burning of fossil fuels, destroying our planet, disproportionate climate impacts on people of color, the violation of indigenous rights and lands, and the destruction of all of our futures. Divestment is aiming to get these funds divestment is aiming to get these funds to take their money out of this industry. As a young Californian, I've always grown up in a state that's been hailed for its climate progressiveness and climate forwardness. I've always grown up believing that my state prioritizes climate change. And now I'm hoping to see it put its money where its mouth is. If our public systems like education, nursing, policing, etc., are so fundamentally tied to this harmful industry that is literally killing people, can we really say we're climate forward? We can't have the backbones of our state invested in these industries. You all are public servants, and I know you care about the well-being and future of our state, and we thank you for it. This is not us asking you to take a hit for us out of your retirement. BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet, studied their client base and found that portfolios or companies that divested experienced no negative financial impacts from divesting from fossil fuels. In fact, they found evidence of modest improvement in fund return. Fossil fuel divestment is the financially and ethically responsible decision. So your money is being invested in a dangerous industry without your permission and without your consent. You can take the lead in helping us turn this around. Now, your unions are under no obligation to listen to a random teenager such as myself, but they should and will listen to you. If you care about your money staying safe and clean, then there are things you can do, such as supporting your union in passing a divestment resolution and telling those in power that you want your money out of fossil fuels. People will tell you to be patient or to take it slow or that we need time to assess. The situation is assessed and it's dire. It's crucial to act now. So please support us in making this happen. Thank you. I will pass it to Claire.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's going to get passed back to me, but thank you so much. I'm so inspired by your work, and I hope you keep it up. Okay, so I'm going to pass it to Dr. Claire Brown, a professor of economics at UC Berkeley.
It's great to be here. Thank you everyone for joining in. Let me share my screen because, as an economics professor, I have to have a PowerPoint. So here we go. Can you see it? Just a second. Let's get it going. Okay, so let me give you a quick economic overview of what CalSTRS and CalPERS must divest in order to fulfill their fiduciary duty. And so I'm Claire Brown, professor of economics at UC Berkeley, and I work with Fossil Free California with my research team there to study this question. So right now, CalPERS and CalSTRS are financing the fossil fuel industry using state assets, state public pension assets. CalPERS and CalSTRS are the #1 and #2 fossil fuel financiers among U.S. public pensions, with CalPERS investing $7.1 billion, $4.6 billion for CalSTRS. And this is in big oil, gas, and coal companies that have reserves. So Governor Newsom had an executive order that said, just a second, California assets, including public pensions, should not be financing fossil fuels. They should be supporting California climate goals. And so the California legislature must ensure wise use of our state assets in order to support climate goals. For example, air pollution from fossil fuel extraction costs the California economy more than $28 billion annually, and this is especially borne by communities of color and low-income Californians. By failing to divest from fossil fuels, CalPERS and CalSTRS have actually lost taxpayer money. There was a study that showed if CalSTRS had divested in 2009, they would have earned an additional $5.5 billion in returns by 2019. CalPERS would have also earned more money. Let me also point out that fossil fuel assets are risky and they can become stranded very quickly. CalPERS and CalSTRS, for example, invested in Gazprom, the Russian fossil fuel company's government stock. Now, CalPERS had 385 million, CalSTRS 323 million in Russian fuels, big oil stocks, and all of this money became worthless when Russia invaded Ukraine and governments responded. Also, during the 2020 pandemic, fossil fuel stocks plummeted to historic lows, and they still have not become profitable investments. So here's a chart. The top line is the S&P 500 in red. The bottom line is the S&P 500 energy sector. And you can see the energy sector, which is fossil fuels, has done much, much worse than the overall S&P 500. So
Ms. Brown,
you can
somebody should let you know we
I'm
can't see your presentation.
You,
I
you're,
asked-
you
I
can't
asked
see my
for the- Oh, I asked for the chat, but I'm sorry.
Oh yeah,
I-
I'm so sorry about that. We'll get it right now.
you're not sharing the screen.
Apologies.
It says I'm sharing my screen, so let me get out and come back in. Let's try that. Can
There
you
we go.
see it now?
Yes,
Yes,
thank
we
you.
can. Thank you so much. Thank you to
Great.
everyone for letting us know.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know, because now let me go down and start the slideshow again. Okay, so there's a chart, but maybe we'll make the slides available because I have to go through them really fast in 5 minutes. So let me just point out that CalPERS and CalSTRS says, hey, we don't divest, we engage. But we have a study at UC Berkeley that shows the engagement strategy has not only been ineffective, it actually undermines climate action. CalPERS and CalSTRS end up backing big oil and gas management. They voted to oppose climate resolutions, and they support electing directors by big oil companies instead of really showing what needs to be done and getting out of fossil fuels and creating clean energy economy. And so if you want to see the study, it's there. And I hope you'll look at it sometime, especially if you're having trouble sleeping. Now, but it's got great talking points. So let me just point out that SB 252 requires divestment from major oil, gas, and coal companies. Now, the way that the bill is set up, it says 100 largest coal companies and the 100 largest oil and gas companies. Well, CalSTRS and CalPERS have already divested from most coal companies mandated by SB 185. So now divestment really is focusing on the 100 largest oil and gas companies. Well, for CalPERS and CalSTRS, if you look at their portfolios, this really means they're going to be divesting from about 80 or so big oil companies by 2030. It's a big move forward, but it's financially responsible. And there's no way that anyone can say that this is not financially responsible. And it will have an impact because we will stop financing the biggest oil and gas companies. So divesting from fossil fuels makes sense both financially and morally. So please say you'll support SB 252 because we need your support. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. But mainly, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for moving forward on divestment by supporting SB 252. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker, and it's a pleasure to be introducing Senator Lina Gonzalez, California State Senator for District 33. and author of SB 252. And it was really great seeing you the other day at the Capitol. So I'll go ahead and let you take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, and hi, everyone. Thank you to Claire and to everyone who's on, and Miriam. I first and foremost want to say thank you for bringing this incredible idea to me. This was, of course, all of your work for many, many years. Last year, we authored together, it wasn't just me, but we authored together SB 1173, which is now SB 252. If we go back in time last year, talking to many of our youth and many of my constituents who, were really just tired of us continuing to finance gas and oil, but also looking at these youth and saying, they really wanted to ensure that legislators were hearing them loud and clear, that their futures mattered. I'm not just a senator. I always say I'm also a mom of 3 boys, 3 young men. I'm also a CalPERS beneficiary. I spent a decade working for the city of Long Beach. So I also too have a CalPERS account. And I'm also the daughter of a union member. I'm the daughter of a truck driver, a Teamster. So I kind of touch all these different points where at the same time, I know that we need to ensure that we're doing something. I know that sometimes we're given messages that say that, we need to continue to finance this industry, but I'll tell you what this industry has done over the last year. This industry has made over $200 billion just in the last year. Some of the big 5, which we are financing now with our pensions, the Chevrons, the Exxons, the BPs and Valeros of the world made $200 billion last year. I think the number is every minute they're making like millions of dollars, like $60 million, something insane. While many of us, when we get our pensions, when we retire, because of our incredible hard work, we're on average in California going to see $2,000 a month because we worked so hard for that, maybe upwards of more, depending on where you are in your career and what role you had. But that's, it's a stark difference. And so the reason I did this again was not just because I'm a senator and I wanted to make a big splash, but again, I'm a mom, I'm the daughter of a union member, I'm a CalPERS beneficiary myself. And I also have another retirement account. I'm one person that's very privileged to have that actually had been very environmental friendly. I worked for a company that looked at environmental, social, and governance issues. And I actually, as an employee of this company, made some really big strides in ensuring that we were divesting as well from fossil fuels, and we are investing our dollars into companies that were going to transition us into a greener and cleaner future. So SB 252, as mentioned, of course, does a few things. So it asks our CalPERS and STRS to keep divestment on the table. We know that they have a fiduciary responsibility. We know that at the end of the day, they need to make the best decisions and most responsible for decisions with our pensions. But divestment should be on the table because, as Claire mentioned, it is risky. And it's also just unfair, as I mentioned. So we're asking them to divest by 2030. We're asking them to also ensure that there's no new investments in these in additional climate risk sort of companies like the big, additional oil companies by next year. And we're also asking for reporting by 2025 that every single year they need to let us know exactly what they're doing. So on top of this all, I think it opens up a discussion for CalPERS and STRS to at least be more transparent with our dollars. I mean, that's when I worked at my other company, I knew exactly what I was investing in, even as somebody that is not a finance person by trade, but I knew exactly what I was investing in and I had control. Here, we don't really have that. We don't have a guidebook or a clear picture of what they're doing with our dollars, with our hard-earned dollars. So the reason that I think we all should be supporting this, and I would hope that we can get some more union support on this, is to ensure that they know we mean business, and that we do want to ensure that our dollars, our public dollars, are being spent wisely, that it's transparent, and that it's also contributing to a greener future for our kids and grandkids, which I think you all know and can of course subscribe to. But we've had really great strides just globally as well. If you think about New York City, there's a bill right now in New York about CalSTRS divesting. We've seen the Netherlands divest billions of dollars. We've seen other communities, our UCs and our CSUs have decided to divest. So if anyone says it can't be done, it can. And these are billions of dollars globally that have been divested in very short timeframes and have also looked forward in a new, cleaner future. So I want to thank all of you for just being a part of this discussion. If you have any questions as well, I know you've got experts here that are so incredible, but my office is always here to help demystify some of the rhetoric, but also know that as somebody who is a 100% labor champion, I'm also a 100% environmental champion, and I think you can do both. And I just really thank you all for being part of this discussion, and I look forward to working with you.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be moving on to our next speaker, Edward Isaacs, member of Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 1000 State Workers. You now have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Miguel. One thing I want to start off with, SEIU Local 1000 represents about, I think, 98 or 99,000 state employees and also members of the California State Bar, rank and file workers. We have 9 bargaining units with the state of California and 1 with the California State Bar. And we're guided by this purpose statement. Local 1000 is a strong member-led union. The purpose of Local 1000 is to have the power necessary to give our members and all Californians the opportunity to have a good life, live in sustainable communities, and enjoy the fruits of social, economic, and environmental justice. And how do we do this? We will achieve this by engaging and developing our members and by creating strategic alliances with key leaders and organizations who share our purpose and values. And I think what the goals and objectives of Fossil Fuels California are definitely aligned with our purpose statement. And we have one current CalPERS member on the board, Teresa Taylor, who is a SEIU District Labor Council president for, I think, DLC 785 in Sacramento area, if I recall correctly, and also a retired SEIU Local 1000 president, Yvonne Walker, on the board of the retirement board of CalPERS, which is, I believe, after CalSTRS, the biggest pension plan in the United States. So if these 2 pension plans, CalSTRS and CalPERS, have joint efforts and combine together to divest from fossil fuels, it's going to have huge impact on other pension plans that will follow the lead. And some of them already have, I believe, like in Lasers and Lacera locally, I think I've done divestments already, if I recall correctly. And hopefully we can do the same. And this is not only a macro issue, getting away from dirty energy, it's also a micro issue in individual communities. I live in downtown, work in downtown Los Angeles. A few miles away, there's oil wells in Southeast Los Angeles, Exposition Park near USC, that are operating right now, and it's having an impact on those communities, which are primarily Latino and African American, and they're feeling the brunt of extraction in their neighborhoods. And unfortunately, they don't see those jobs because a lot of it's automated, and there's not a lot of labor, by manual labor by hand or needing humans. And once the oil is extracted, there's often damage to the water systems, sewer systems, other infrastructure, roads because of heavy trucks, congestion on the railways nearby. So there's a lot of consequences of the industry that we face locally in Los Angeles and Wilmington, other communities in California and Central Valley as well, Bakersfield area, for instance. And we have members throughout the state of California. We have regional offices in Sacramento, Oakland for the coastal areas of Northern Central California, Los Angeles Southwest office, Ontario is the Southeast office, Fresno for Central California, and San Diego. So we definitely look forward to working on this effort with Fossil Fuels California, Clean Air Act measures, clean water measures as well, and look forward to making continued improvement at the state level and local level, and even the federal level as well, as far as legislation and advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we'll be moving on to our next speaker, Steve Ongard. Steve Ongarth is a green representative of the Inland Boatmen's Union, San Francisco Bay Area region, and an affiliate of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. Although Steve is not coming to us today as a representative of ILWU, he can speak to his experience successfully passing a fossil fuel divestment resolution. Steve will provide an overview of different paths that can be taken depending on your union size and structure, and will share his experience and success story. Thank you, Steve. Go ahead.
Greetings, everybody. It's an honor to be here. I hope you all can hear me. And I will apologize because I do not have a camera on my desktop, so unfortunately you'll have to look at a blank screen. Trust me, I'm there, speaking to you. I am a member of the San Francisco Bay region of the Inland Boatmen's Union. Our union represents deckhands, captains, ticket agents, and terminal assistants working on ferries, tugs, and terminals around the Bay Area. At least one of the companies we represent, and my current employer, Golden Gate Ferry, has CalPERS as its health plan, and our pension fund is invested there. Last year, I was able to get the IBU region, which is what we call locals, to pass a resolution calling for CalPERS to support divestment. The resolution I drafted was modeled on similar resolutions passed by other unions, modified for our specific needs. It passed unanimously, although one caveat I will say is I'm an unpaid official in my union, so I have a slight advantage. I was able to bring a similar resolution to the ILWU's Northern California District Council, which is a regional council that includes delegates from all of Northern California ILWU locals, including my IBU local. And I'm here to walk you through the general framework and or the game plan for getting your union local to pass such a resolution using this excellent slideshow that Fossil Free California has put together. We have the first slide here. Please note that this is a general guide, and specifics will vary based on your union's particular characteristics. First of all, these slides are arranged in order from small locals to larger locals, and unions with much support for your resolution to little or no initial support for such a resolution. You can tell by looking at the orange arrows and the blue arrows. The orange arrows sort of describe each process, and as you'll see, each of the slides we go through, the arrow will start lower down and there'll be more steps. And then there will be a blue arrow at the bottom of some of the slides from left to right showing the level of complexity. So on slide 1 here, we'll start with a small union local with high initial support. In this case, it's mainly a matter of drafting a resolution and bringing it to a meeting and voting it up or down, the membership voting it up or down, and having it hopefully pass. Ready for slide number 2. To make that happen, it's likely you'll need to start by organizing rank and file support, perhaps by bringing a petition, requesting or demanding the executive committee or whatever your governing body is, pass such a resolution and gathering signatures to support it. By the way, these slides and information will be made available to you, so if you miss or forget a detail, you can always come back and revisit this flow chart later on. So don't worry if you're not taking notes or if this all seems a bit confusing at first. You'll have many chances to go through and look at it again. Moving on to slide number 3. As you will see as we progress through this flow chart, the lower the vertical arrows are outlining the steps needed in the process begins, the more complex your process will be. Notice the blue arrow at the bottom of the screen that goes from left to right, saying lower complexity to higher complexity. So, moving on to slide number 4. As many of you may have guessed, if your union local is larger, the more steps you will need to take. It is also likely, though not inevitable, that the larger the local, the more likely the initial support will be lower because more members equals more opinions and likely larger diversity of opinions. In larger unions, a climate action or green committee may already exist, or you may need to organize one in order to create the petitions or draft the resolution language and gather the signatures you need to get your governing body to pass the resolution. The good news is that a climate action committee usually gives your efforts more legitimacy in the eyes of the membership and sometimes the officials. Your committee is also not necessarily a one-off. It can be used for other climate or green-related issues you want your union to take up in the future. Moving on to slide number 5. You're dealing with a less receptive executive committee. or officials, you may need to gather large numbers of signatures from your rank and file membership to get the officials to pass a divestment resolution. There's strength in numbers, and that is what a union is fundamentally all about anyway. Moving on to slide number 6. If you're dealing with a less receptive executive committee or officials, you may need to organize actions that get their attention. Such actions may also be necessary to build support among your unions or your locals rank and file that will help give them the courage to join in and support your efforts. By the way, in most cases, resistance from your officials may not be due to any fundamental opposition or to decarbonization or climate action, but more to bureaucratic inertia. One of the long-term advantages of going through this process is if you do it effectively and methodically, it'll help rebuild the rank and file muscle or brain power you need for your basic union democracy and efforts. Moving on to slide number 7. Lastly, here are all the different scenarios on the same chart so you can compare and contrast the steps necessary and their complexity. So as you see on the left side, you have a small local with high support, you have fewer steps, and you start higher up in the process. But as you move to the more complex union structures, if they have more regions and or councils and more members, you'll likely have lower support initially, and so there'll be more steps to go through. As you can see, it goes from left to right, more complexity the further on you go. This isn't necessarily what you'll run into. These are just sort of basic examples of what you will find. And moving on to the last slide. In case you're concerned that you may have forgotten some of all of that information we just gave you, we have a helpful little cheat sheet here with a QR code and a bit.ly website URL you can copy down. So you can go back and look at this guide anytime, and hopefully that'll help you through the process. With that, I will pass it back to Miguel.
Thank you so much. That was so great. Our next, and I believe our last speaker is Dr. Carlos Davidson, a professor of environmental studies at California State University, San Francisco, and can help speak to the roles that unions can play in uplifting legislation such as Senate Bill 252 for fossil fuel divestment. Dr. Davidson was a faculty leader in the campaign, which resulted in San Francisco State becoming the first public college or university to divest from fossil fuels. I'll go ahead and give you the floor. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Carlos, do we have you there? I'm not seeing you're off of mute yet. Maybe let's go ahead and field a few questions and then we'll come back to Carlos in a couple of minutes. Oh, are you there?
Okay, I think he just unmuted right now.
Hello, am I up?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you are.
Sorry about that. Yes. So once your union passes a support divestment resolution, the next thing that you can do is find out what you need to do to get your union to include divestment in its legislative work. This is key. Many unions are powerful players in the legislature, but just passing a resolution, you'd think that would do it, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee at all that your union is going to work on the divestment bill. Your union may pass a whole bunch of resolutions, but only have the resources to work on a handful of bills. So figuring out that process, which is different than the resolution process, is key, and to not be taken by surprise and put all your effort into the resolution and then not realize that, the next day a decision was being made about what bills to actually work on. Some unions have a legislation committee that decides what bills they're going to work on for each session. So if so, find out what you need to do to get the divestment resolution on the legislation committee bills, the legislation committee's agenda. Find out who gets to speak at that meeting. It may not be open to everyone. And so then who's going to be there? Who can be your advocate for having the divestment bill be chosen as one of the priority bills for the union to work on. Once that happens, and your union says, okay, we're going to work on this, that opens the door to a bunch of different possible activities. First, your union lobbyist, and many unions have a full-time or part-time person whose job it is to work the legislature. So then your lobbyist can start talking to legislators and staff and urging them to support SB 252. You can organize union members to attend Senate and Assembly hearings for the bill and give what are called Me Too comments. Your name, your organization, and you support the bill. So for example, I'm Jane Rodriguez, CSEA, support SB 252. It's that quick and easy. That's all they want. So you can get people, they don't have to be self-confident speakers. They just come give the Me Too. It's quick and easy. In the Senate, it can be done in person or online. In the Assembly, it's only in person. You can also get someone from your organization, like an officer, to be a hearing witness. And that's a speaker who's given a few minutes to speak on the issue. You can coordinate this with Fossil Free California or the California Faculty Association. Those are the two bill sponsors. Those are the two organizations that are working with Senator Gonzalez on the whole campaign to pass the bill. So get in touch with Miriam or CFA's Ron Rapp. The union presence last year for SB 1173 was amazing. Sometimes the opponents would show up, they would have like 2 speakers and 1 Me Too person. At one hearing, CFA's president spoke in favor of divestment and why it was a social justice issue. And another 20 CFA members in red union shirts were there giving Me Too comments. And another, I forget how many people on the phone lines. It was really impressive. And so then finally, the last thing that you can do once it's a legislative priority is your union can do its own media supporting the bill. You can do press releases, you can do communications to your members. And then also you can work with the coalition, providing quotes for the coalition to use in their press work. And again, contact Miriam for that if your union gets to that point. And with that, I will stop and take questions in the question and answer. Thank you very much. It's great to be part of this.
Thank you so much. So now we'll get to the Q&A part. Unfortunately, we had really great speakers that went through it all so thoroughly and so quickly that we have extra time for question and answers. And so the way we'll do this is we can go ahead and have people raise their hand, and then we will unmute you, and then you can ask your question. And for those that are not comfortable with that, you can go ahead and put in your comment or question in the chat, and we will do our best to answer it in the order we see it. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and answer the first hand up, which I see as Peter Albert. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute.
Yes, hi. Thank you to Miriam and the organizers, and thanks to all the speakers. I'm Pete Albert. I'm a member of SEIU Local 1021, which is local public sector unions in Northern California. 55,000 members. We have about a third of our members in CalPERS jurisdictions. My question is specifically about resolutions. I've heard people talking about resolutions to support divestment. I'm guessing that this year, what our resolution would be resolution to support SB 252 rather than divestment in general. Is that the case?
Okay, if any of our panelists want to take that question, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. I don't think on the resolution, it matters that much. You know, I know California Faculty Association passed a resolution before there was a bill. So it was just a general, we call on CalPERS and CalSTRS to divest from fossil fuels, and no mention of a bill. That's okay. And the key thing is then beyond that, moving to do the legislative work specifically with the bill. But I don't know if it matters either way. Fine, go ahead and endorse the bill, you know, now that we know the number.
Miguel, this is Pete again. If I could ask, reply, about 1/3 of our members are in the San Francisco retirement system, which is an independent system, not governed by the state government, and about 1/3 of our members are in 1937 Act counties, 7 counties in Northern California. If we make a resolution generally about divestment, we may get pushback, especially from San Francisco. I'm on the pension committee. I know that our resolution will be about specifically 252.
Okay, awesome. I also had a question that we had earlier in the chat. Why divest from only the top 100, 200, and SB 252? I want complete divestment. I have CalPERS and CalSTRS accounts. When and where is the first hearing I can make the testimony? I can make me to testimony.
I think that's 2 questions, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab at this, and I think I had answered him directly, answered Baba directly. But yeah, and I'd love additional insight as well. But the Carbon Underground 200 is a list that has been sort of the standard list of the largest gas and oil companies. I believe right now, from what CalPERS has mentioned to us, is that they're now they're invested in, I think, 90% of that 200 list. I think it's about 170 something, 75 companies. So it's quite an extensive list, but I think it's certainly a list that we can start with. And I think, you know, if there is anything else remaining outside of the Carbon Underground 200, we'd love to talk about that. And I think Claire can add additional on that. The second question, answer to the question, I'm sorry, is the committees start, I would say, around early March. And so we should get a committee date pretty soon. And as soon as we do, we'd love to hear you. And has been mentioned, we'd love letters of support, your resolutions. And of course, you attending as union members would be really, really beneficial for us. Calling in, coming in, and just being present, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, let me follow up. Wallace, let me just, first of all, thank you for your courageous leadership on this. Last year, this year, it really means a lot to Californians and the future of the planet. So the carbon, we do a lot of work with the Carbon Underground 200. And it's really interesting that most people don't realize is that 100 of the countries are coal and 100 of the countries are oil and gas. And so actually the number about what CalPERS and CalSTRS are invested in is mostly oil and gas because of the earlier legislation that had them divesting from coal. And so actually they end up investing in about 80 of the major big oil and gas companies. Now, let me just tell you, even though down the line, from these major oil and gas companies, I got to tell you, they do almost all of the emissions, and it's a huge step forward. And so I'm just so excited, Senator Gonzalez, to be on your team and support you all the way, because this is an enormously important bill, and it's a huge step forward.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you, Claire. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I see we have another hand up from James McRitchie.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've run for the CalPERS board probably more than anyone else. And I think they will make the argument and have made the argument that divestment is not good because if you set, you know, they own stock that's bought on the secondary market. So they're not investing money that goes directly into a company. They're just trading stock with someone else. So if they divest, somebody else buys, and whoever buys may care less about the environment than they do. So one way to deflect that kind of argument, I think, would be, instead of calling for a complete divestment, would be to call for a phased out drawdown. And don't draw it down beyond the point where they can't file proposals. Okay, I file a lot of proposals. I filed 80 proposals last year on diversity and inclusion and plastics and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, to file a shareholder proposal, you have to own stock worth $2,000 for 3 years, or 1 year for $25,000. So don't let CalPERS and CalSTRS use that argument that, well, if they divest, they won't be able to engage. Don't require them to invest all the way. They can keep, $50,000 in each of those oil companies or whatever, and they can still engage. They can file proposals, like, even after we get electric cars and all that stuff, oil companies are still going to probably be there making plastic bags and all the plastic stuff that, we're trying to reduce that, of course. We're certainly trying to, we're trying to get them to audit what they're making. But anyway, I think that a better strategy would be, a kind of a phased reduction and I would put in targets. If you don't reduce your emissions by 50% in 3 years, we're going to reduce our holdings by 50%, so phase it out, but then don't phase it totally out. Keep them engaged. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. Does any of our panelists want to take a stab at that comment?
Go ahead, Claire.
That you read our engagement report, because you say, oh, we don't want to give up engagement, but in fact, the way that engagement's being done has been not engaging. And so CalPERS and CalSTRS just back the company management. They vote against resolutions that would improve and reduce emissions. They vote for company directors that are against changing the business plan. And so even though it sounds good to say, oh, well, we'll keep engaging, the problem is CalPERS and CalSTRS engagement is not moving us along. We need to move quickly, and the only way to do that, I think, is to stop financing fossil fuels, and not just stocks, but also bonds, because bonds are actually like lending money to fossil fuel companies to make investments. And so I just think it's really important to remember that. This is a great bill, thank you, Senator Gonzalez, and it's a major step forward. Thank you.
The only other thing I would add is just on that note, with Claire had mentioned, is that they have certainly bought into this, because they've created a whole narrative around, these gas and oil companies are somehow magically going to hit their net zero goals by 2050, when we know, in fact, that's not true. When we're continuing to invest in their expansion and additional exploration, there's no way in heck that they're going to hit those 2050 goals if we continue to fund them, even at a $50,000 rate. So I think I don't see them, if they wanted to transition, they would do so. The engagement is not working at this time, unfortunately, is what it seems.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to move on to some questions in the chat before I get to the raised hands. But I do recognize that there are raised hands, so we will get to them. But we had a question for Senator Gonzalez from Chris McCarthy. If CalPERS voted on divestment today, how many board members would vote in favor, and how many out of? It's also a multiple part question, if you don't mind. It's also how many co-sponsors do you have? Are San Francisco senators on board already? And if not, they can write a letter.
It's a great question. I'm not sure on the board members. I'd have to do the math on that. And I think Miriam can help on that one. In terms of our co-sponsors, obviously we've got quite a few union members, of course, Fossil Free California. We've got California Faculty Association. We do have the ILWU, of course, the Northern California District Council that has been mentioned, UDW, CFT, CNA, and we of course have, and my colleagues, we have Senator Stern, Senator Wiener, Assembly Member Ash Kalra would like to support as well. I think we'll continue to build that coalition of additional members, and we'll definitely make sure we're working on the San Francisco members as well. I think last year we built a very, very large, strong coalition of folks. So it's, I think those efforts, continuing to talk to our locals, continuing to talk to additional members, we'll need all the support and help in this, ensuring that we're making a big splash this time around.
Yeah, and I can quickly jump in on the question of CalPERS board members in support of divestment. Officially, we only know about State Treasurer Fiona Ma, who is in support of divestment. She sits on the CalPERS board. In addition, State Controller it's now Malia Cohen, also ran with a platform of pro-divestment. So that would be 2 board members in the CalPERS board who support divestment. On the CalSTRS side, there's an additional one, making it 3 with Tony Thurmond, who's the state superintendent. So not super strong support from the boards of either pension, unfortunately, at this point.
All right, awesome. Senator Gonzalez, these next 2 questions were in the chat for you. They were from Megan Shumway and Peter Albert, and it was, when and where is the first hearing I can make to provide testimony? What committee in the Senate will SB 252 go to? I'm sorry, it was a typo.
Oh, that's okay. So again, I think committees will begin early March. And so we haven't received a date yet, but as soon as we do, we'll make sure everyone knows about it, of course, so you can come and express your sentiments and hopefully support. And then in terms of the committees that we saw last year, we saw 2 committees in the Senate. We saw the Senate Labor Committee, which is chaired by Senator Cortese, and the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by Senator Umberg, both of whom supported the bill last year. Now, of course, we've got 7 new legislators in the Senate caucus, or in the Senate overall. And so I think that'll change a bit, but they seem to still be favorable. Like, for instance, I'm not on the Senate Judiciary Committee anymore, but I was replaced by a great environmental senator, Senator Ben Allen, who has been very supportive of this bill in years past. So we'll continue to keep working on that. The issue is going to be, hopefully not, but last year the Assembly committee, the pension committee, didn't even give the bill a hearing, as we know. So we have a brand new Assembly member who seems to be very progressive, very forward thinking. I love her. Her name is Assembly member Tina McKinner. And so I'm very hopeful that her committee will hear the bill and that we can get it passed through her committee.
Okay, just to be fair, for the people that had their hand raised on video, I see there's Marty Bennett has their hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you so much for your patience.
Yes, Marty Bennett, Unite Here, Local 2 in Sonoma County. I'd like to know which labor councils supported the legislation last year, and we can anticipate will do so this year. And I presume the California Labor Federation is on board as well? No.
No, unfortunately not at this time. In fact, I just had a meeting yesterday with the president of the California Labor Federation. Wasn't able to go into too much specifics because she does have some boundaries she cannot cross because of the year cooling off period, but they definitely know about this. And again, it's even more helpful just not to, belabor the point, but having, of course, a lot of the local councils in support. So again, it was the ILWU, CFT, FA, We really tried to work with CTA, and I'm sure my labor friends here can express a little bit more on that, and as well as SCIU is one group that we were really trying. SCIU California was one we were really trying to work on. So it was slow moving, but I think if anyone else would like to add additional insight on the labor front, we'd love to hear that too, on what else we can do differently this year.
I would add, often if the San Francisco Labor Council endorses something, then Alameda might, then North Bay might. And so if we can get a couple labor councils to endorse it early on, that'll be very helpful to others of us who are trying to get support within our labor councils.
Great, thank
I
you.
see Steve. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I see Steve has their hand up and they say they could answer this question. So you can go ahead and unmute.
I wanted to address the question and also address a question that showed up in the chat about dealing with reluctant union officials. It really comes down to getting your rank and file organized and putting pressure on the officials to go along with it, because it's essentially the root question of how does democracy work? It's a participatory sport, not a spectator sport. And, you know, labor councils tend to be quite political. There tends to be a reluctance to try and move on what are considered to be controversial issues, because there's the usual response I get is, well, we don't want to divide the House of Labor, which usually translates into we don't want to offend the building trades or other union locals that tend to be less receptive to these ideas. But the fact is the House of Labor is already divided on this issue, in the sense that there are unions that are very much on board with this, and there's some unions that aren't. And it really comes down to how much organizing you are able to do. It requires rank and file organizing. You have to basically out-organize those that are opposed to this. Just as when you're dealing with the boss, you have to out-organize the boss. I can tell you that among the union membership, most union members support what we're doing. Most union members recognize that climate is a catastrophe and that the unions have to be a part of the solution, and they want to be a part of the solution, whether it's things like the Green New Deal or divesting from fossil fuels, as long as there's a just transition for the affected workers. So it really comes down to organizing, and you might have to go through several steps. That's why we did the slide presentation. As far as laws saying unions can't get political, really, this is about your pensions and your union's investment in pensions. And that is definitely something that union members have a right to voice their opinions on. And unions have a right to divest from things that they think are not good fiduciary investments. And we're making the argument that fossil fuels are not a good fiduciary investment.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on to our next hand raise, which is Cynthia Landry. You can go ahead and unmute.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I came in a little late because Alameda County is in bargaining, and I'm on the bargaining team. I wanted to ask whether there was a bill number and a sponsor at this point. And secondly, Lena, I believe you referenced our state council, our SEIU state council, and I want to know if you have been able to decipher any position that the state council may have on divestment. I think in the past they have been somewhat neutral. That's my, that's my opinion of it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. So the bill number is SB 252, and we do have, of course, the incredible support of CFA, CFT, UDW, ILWU, Northern Council. We've been working, we'll continue to work with SCIU State Council. Last year, you're exactly right, they were neutral. We really tried to work them, and it just, didn't work out. But I think very open-minded and sitting down with me to be able to talk through a lot of the, the back and forth, as well as CTA. So we'll continue to do the same work in that regard with your help. And I say that respectfully. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I wanted to recognize, I didn't see that Eddie Isaacs, you had your hand up for the last question. I don't know if you wanted to add something to the last thing that was said.
I'd love to actually, yes, because I just want to be very quick. The Los Angeles County Federation of Labor has some new leadership, new staff, new executive committees members. So I think there's a chance that they might look into fossil fuel divestment more. It was often blockaded before by some of the trades, frankly, but I think there's kind of a change in perspective locally in Los Angeles County. So we'll see what can be done. And also in the SCA Local 1000, we've had change of leadership. So there might be more, open advocacy against, fossil fuel investment and into divestment, just to clarify on the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next hand raise can go ahead and mute. I don't know who's who, Joan and Jen. Nice to see you. Oh, you're still on mute. You're still on mute. It should work.
There we go. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Bean, and I'm a CalSTRS recipient. And I just want to thank Zara, because I really want to thank Youth versus Apocalypse, because 5 years ago, that's how I found out that my pension was invested in fossil fuels. I didn't find out from my union or anything else, and there it was. My question is, what about the unions that are working in the fossil free, that actually have their jobs there? And I know that some of those unions did not support the previous bill. How can we work into the legislation something that is a transition for them? Like, where do they go for their jobs if fossil fuels divest and there are fewer jobs in that field? How does that training happen and new jobs open up? Or how do we talk to the fossil fuel companies about you should create new jobs with, like solar panels or whatever other kind of energy we're going to be going with? I'm just curious about how that gets written into the bill, how that support gets happened so that those unions can support it as well.
It's a big question. I'll just say one part of it, that I think it's important for us as divestment activists to be clear that divestment is not going to hurt these companies financially. Exxon is not going to suffer if the state of California divests. And so people who work for those companies don't need to fear that this bill is going to hurt them directly. And that's not to say that the bigger issue of climate transition, there are jobs issues, but for divestment, they're not really job issues. There's been a whole bunch of economic studies looking at divestments in previous industries and not finding job losses at all. Just no evidence that happens. I'll leave it to someone else to talk about, how do we address the real transition needs? And Claire, I know that's something that you've looked at.
Yes, and I turn on my video, but I don't have that power too. But let me just say that California is spending a lot of money on what they call high road studies, so that around all these different counties, like for example, I'm working on a just transition in Contra Costa County where we have 6 refineries. And it's actually really great that we're doing this around the state, because you want to do it locally. Every local county has different situations, different economic development and so forth. And so as we were just told, divestment's not going to cause the just transition problem, but we really want to find the just transition. We really need to move ahead. We have absolutely got to figure out how to get from the fossil fuel economy to a clean energy economy. And we can do it, but it will take a lot of work and study and figuring out exactly how to support not just fossil fuel workers, but the communities that they live in. Those communities need support too, to replenish their revenues that they were getting from refineries and extraction. But we can do it. One thing that bothers me the most, though, I was out on the line at Chevron when they were having a strike. The big oil companies are now just scaring their workers. Anytime any bill comes up that relates to climate, they scare their workers, say, you'll never get another good job. You're going to be at McDonald's and they aren't even going to have jobs because they have robots. And so you won't have any work at all. Who's going to take care of your family? And they do this over and over and over again. And in the last strike, Chevron won. After the workers were out a long time, they wouldn't even pay during a huge profit year for improved safety at the job. And so we need to pull together and really work together in our communities and use this high road money to ensure that there's a transition, but not just for fossil fuel workers. We want to bring all the workers along. And so I'm really hopeful as a labor economist that we can use this moment with both federal and state money to develop new, good jobs for all our workers.
I'd quickly like to touch on this if that's okay. Yeah, I'm so glad that you found out about divestment through Youth versus Apocalypse. Actually, speaking with a lot of teachers and a lot of teaching unions and CTA delegates, which is the largest teaching union, there is so much fear mongering and fear that has been placed in people around divestment. And I'm sure that's true for people who are part of your unions as well. Like some people have come to us saying like, oh, I can't support CalSTRS divestment because I drive a gas car, or because like I don't have solar panels. And there's just so much information and general fear around divestment that is often not placed. So yeah, like talking to teachers and hearing them say like, oh, I can't because I drive a gas car, that really makes divestment seem like it's not for everybody and it's only for people who can afford electric cars or solar panels, and that's really not the case. So one of the big things we've tried to do with teaching is try to combat a lot of that fear and misinformation and stigma around divestment that a lot of fossil fuel companies have the lobbyists and have the money to spread.
And I'll add to that, and those are both awesome answers. I'm a union member, and this is something I've been working on for a quarter century or more. First, I want to lift up a link that Martha Hawthorne from SEIU put in the chat to the California Climate Jobs Plan, which is sometimes called the Pollen Report. This is a very detailed study on how California can afford a high road jobs just transition for adversely affected fossil fuel workers that Robert Pollen and his colleagues at the Political Economy Research Institute did specifically for the state of California. When it came out, 19 unions endorsed it right off the bat, and it included 3 United Steelworkers locals who represent refinery workers. Several other unions have endorsed it since then. And what it really comes down to is getting the state of California to enact the provisions of that plan. It's not free of flaws. It has some weaknesses, but it's a good start. On a more general note, this is something that I have been involved in for a long time, as I mentioned, and I'm going to do something which is, pardon the bad etiquette, but I'm going to plug something of my own that I'm working on in the chat, and that's the IWW Environmental Union Caucus's website, because there's a wealth of information on answering those questions, including how to deflate the jobs versus environment card or rhetoric that the bosses play. And this is something they play all the time. It is a well-worn playbook, and it is possible to defeat it. Unfortunately, a lot of people fall into the trap of getting sucked into it. So I have some knowledge on how to get around that. I had a great mentor in that, my late hero and mentor, Judy Berry. I'll just single her out as somebody who taught me practically everything I know about this. Who unfortunately passed away from cancer about a quarter century ago. But really, there are ways to get around that. It just takes work, it takes relationship building, but it also takes understanding what the rhetoric is and how to defeat it. So anyway, I hope that's useful.
Thank you so much for that, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions that we had in the chat still that had gone unanswered. And one of those questions was from Janet McMillan. Any tips for getting resistant union leadership to believe this is an appropriate thing for unions to do? My union is citing the Dills Act and saying they stay out of politics. And just a reminder, we only have 4 minutes left.
I answered that question earlier. That was the one that I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Let's see if this one is unanswered. Question in the chat from SEIU 1000 member Jose Medina. I am up for a challenge, but the question is we don't have enough activism and we are barely scratching the surface. How do we build on this without a solid plan to get back to where we are at? I'm sorry. How do we build a solid plan to get to where we were at before the pandemic in terms of active union activity? Go ahead, Eddie. You're still on mute.
Hopefully, the pandemic will ebb for the next several months and not flare up again like it did last spring and early summer. And then we can do more in-person activities. I think that's one that's really key to the activism and union movements overall. Because, we've been on the Zoom world primarily for the last nearly 3 years, March 2020 when the pandemic started. And, folks feel comfortable with being in person again and doing stuff door to door, member to member. I think that's key. It's hard to do on the internet, especially with folks who maybe don't have the technology to do it. And there's an accessibility issue. And the other thing is we have to really show that recent storms, for instance, show that the climate change is real. It's happening in front of us right now. And we're several years before that, we had drought, virtually no rain. Then we had a deluge of rain within, several weeks. So I think we just have to pinpoint these issues directly to folks, and then they'll understand and want to get involved in divestment and other activist issues related to the environment.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our program. It was really, really great hearing from all of the speakers today. So a big, big thanks to all of them. And thanks to the audience for tuning in and staying with us the entire time. It's really, really appreciated. And we look forward to connecting soon with all of you guys.